If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. The universe has guided you because there's something within you that is beginning to awaken. You feel that you are not an ordinary woman, and perhaps you can't even explain why. But today, you will remember who you are. Welcome, ancient soul. If at any point in your life you have ever felt too much for others, too intense, too sensitive, too intuitive, too loving, maybe it's because you weren't born to fit anywhere. You were born to ignite. This video is for you who have ever felt out of place, who loves with your soul, who feels everything deeply. You who have been called crazy for following your heart, who have cried without knowing why, who senses before understanding. You who, even when everything around you is falling apart, holds within you a hope that never dies. Today, we will talk about something sacred, the 10 unique traits that reveal a twin flame woman. Maybe you've never understood why your relationships are so intense, why you attract connections that leave a deep mark, or why certain goodbyes hurt so much, as if something has been ripped from your soul. The truth is, there exists a rare kind of woman, a woman who carries a spiritual calling in her love, a woman who doesn't love with her body, she loves with her spirit, and because of that, she cannot be forgotten. She is the bridge between heaven and earth. If this woman is you, get ready. You will recognize yourself in every word. Before we dive in, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. If this content touches your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear this today. It could be a friend, or even your own flame. Now take a deep breath, silence your mind, because what we are about to reveal goes far beyond personality. It's about essence. It's about mission. It's about spiritual love. Have you ever felt that you carry a kind of love that others don't know how to handle? As if your way of loving is too big, dense, mysterious, almost uncomfortable for those who are only used to superficial loves? Maybe you have been rejected exactly for that. For feeling too much, for not knowing how to love halfway, for not being able to pretend disinterest when your whole soul had already surrendered. And maybe, behind your strength, there is a fatigue that no one sees, because you have been carrying the weight of a love that doesn't always find a return, or isn't always understood. But the truth is, this doesn't make you weak. This makes you rare. Women like you are not born in every generation. You came with a calling, and you are not alone. Many women right now are awakening to something that goes beyond any relationship. They are feeling, deep in their soul, that the way they have always loved, that surrender without explanation, that almost sacred intensity, has never been a mistake. It has always been a mission. It's just that this awareness doesn't always come early. Before that comes the pain, comes the abandonment, comes the silence. You start to wonder if the problem is you, if loving so much is weakness, if giving everything of yourself is foolishness. Do you remember the times you were misunderstood? When they said you were clingy, dramatic, complicated? When you were accused of having too many expectations, of suffocating, of hoping for the impossible? And you tried to adjust, tried to close yourself off, tried to stop feeling, but you couldn't, because inside you dwells something greater, an ancestral wisdom, a love that has crossed lifetimes. And at some point, this love collided with another. That meeting turned the world upside down. Maybe it was brief, maybe intense, maybe it ended abruptly, but you were never the same again. Because there, your soul recognized something. And even after the end, something continues to vibrate. This is where the dilemma of the twin flame woman begins. She doesn't understand why that connection marked her so deeply, why she can't simply move on like others do. Why, even in silence, there is an invisible thread that keeps her connected to someone who, apparently, is already gone. This woman starts asking questions that go far beyond the ego. What was that I felt? Why did I surrender like that? Did he feel it too? Does he still feel it? Will he ever come back? Or did this pain come only to transform me? It's at this point in the journey that many get lost, or awaken. Because when pain pierces the soul with such intensity, it's not there to punish. It's there to reveal. There is something in this woman that needs to be remembered. Something the world tried to erase, that pain tried to silence. but that is coming back to the surface. And this revelation has little to do with the other, and everything to do with you. It's not about the man who left. It's about the woman you are becoming. It's about what awakened in you when everything seemed to have been ripped away. It's about what was born when you thought you were dying inside. The twin flame woman goes through a deep initiation through love, and that's why, now, you are beginning to remember. Remember what sets you apart. Remember the signs that have always been there. Remember the energy you carry, and that the world still hasn't learned to recognize, but that the universe celebrates. Today, we will talk about the 10 unique traits that define this woman. But before listing any of them, you need to understand, they are not chosen gifts. They are marks of the soul. They are wounds that turned into light. They are sensitivities that time transformed into strength. They are characteristics that seem like weakness in the eyes of the world, but that spiritually are codes of mission. This is the woman who doesn't give up on loving, even when everything around her tries to teach her to give up. This is the woman who, even in pieces, still reaches out. This is the woman who, even without understanding, continues believing. And if you feel that this is your portrait, know, your path is just beginning. Every trait we are about to reveal here is a mirror, not for you to mold yourself to them, but so that you can finally recognize yourself in them. Because the love you seek begins in who you are. The twin flame woman, before recognizing herself as such, goes through a period of darkness, a silent crossing that no one understands. She may be smiling on the outside, fulfilling her responsibilities, taking care of others as she always has. But inside, there is an emptiness that echoes, a longing for something she can't even name. And this longing has nothing to do with a face, a story, or a specific memory. It is a longing for her own soul. This is the moment of disconnection. When the woman begins to feel that she is far from herself, as if she has lost herself amid the demands of the world, the pressures, the attempts to be accepted, loved, understood. She tries to fit in, tries to adjust, tries to be more light, more rational, more common. But something inside her screams. She feels she is betraying who she really is. And it is precisely in this space of pain, of not belonging, of confusion between what the world expects and what the soul desires, that many women awaken to the call of the twin flame. This call, most of the time, does not come with romance. It comes with rupture. It is a meeting that, instead of calming, ignites. That, instead of filling, exposes what is still wounded. The woman meets someone, a man who seems to touch parts of her that no one ever has. His eyes say things that his mouth does not dare to utter. The connection is immediate, intense, frightening. It feels like they have known each other for lifetimes, and perhaps they have. But contrary to what many think, this connection does not come to complete. It comes to awaken. And awakening, at times, hurts more than sleeping. It is at this moment that the ego enters into conflict. The mind wants to understand, control, define. The heart wants to surrender, but is afraid. And the soul? The soul knows. But it is trapped in a body that has not yet learned to trust. And then, what seemed like a fairy tale turns into an avalanche. Distance arises, silence, rejection, confusion. And you ask yourself, how can something so strong end like this? How can someone who looked at you as if they saw your soul now pretend you don't exist? How can such a deep love be denied? The answer is not in logic. It is in the spiritual realm. The connection of twin flames is not about romance. It is about evolution. It is not about a happy ending. It is about the awakening of the spirit. And the awakening, to happen, needs collapse. When he leaves, it is not he who is abandoning you. It is the universe calling you back to yourself. It is life saying, look at what still hurts. Heal what you were trying to hide. Because your soul wants to love truthfully, but still carries fear, neediness, attachment, idealization. The distance is the mirror. The other becomes the exact reflection of your unintegrated shadows. If he disappears, it is because there are parts of you that still vanish from yourself. If he denies, it is because there are parts of you that still deny themselves. If he silences you, it is because you have stopped listening to your own soul. It's hard to hear this, but it's liberating. The twin flame woman, when she awakens, realizes that nothing is happening against her. Everything is happening so she can become whole again. There is no rejection. There is redirection. There is no abandonment. There is activation of healing. It is at this point that she begins to see beyond the pain. She understands that that man came to reveal what was still hidden. He illuminated lights in dormant parts. He brought to the surface ancestral traumas, childhood wounds, patterns of submission, fears of abandonment. He was the instrument, not the source of pain. The pain was already there. He just touched it. And when this woman begins to perceive this, something changes. She stops chasing, stops asking for explanations, stops seeking answers outside. She understands that healing is not in winning someone back. It is in winning herself back. The reconnection begins when she returns to herself the love she tried to give to someone who was not yet ready to receive it. It is at this moment that suffering transforms into revelation. Silence becomes sacred. Absence turns into a mirror. Longing becomes a way back home. And she begins to remember. She was never just a woman in love. She is a soul on a mission, a bearer of light, a catalyst for transformation. Her pain was not in vain. It was a call. And now she needs to choose to continue seeing herself as a victim of separation or to recognize herself as the protagonist of her own ascension. Because behind every "it's over," the universe hears an "I am ready," ready to stop begging for love and start manifesting presence, ready to abandon control games and surrender to the flow of the soul, ready to transform pain into wisdom. This is the beginning of the turnaround. Pain loses its power when the soul takes command. There is a moment in the twin flame woman's journey when the scream falls silent. She has cried all she could. She has questioned everything she had to question. She has tried to go back, fix, understand, rationalize. She has spent sleepless nights reliving scenes, seeking signs, asking what she did wrong. She has blamed herself for feeling too much, for expecting too much, for loving too much. But there comes a time when the noise tires, and all that remains is silence. It is in this silence that the soul begins to speak, not with words, not with theories, but with a wisdom that wells up from deep within, like an ancestral whisper. She begins to realize that there is something sacred in retreat. That distance is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of an alchemy, because you don't heal a spiritual love with superficial distractions. You don't extinguish the fire of the soul with new encounters, empty promises, forced attempts to forget. The twin flame woman only begins to heal when she stops running from what she feels, when she stops looking for in others what she can only find within herself. And that is when she surrenders, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. She stops resisting, stops fighting against reality, stops wanting to force reconnections that are not yet ripe. She accepts what is, not as resignation, but as openness. She understands that love does not disappear, it only transforms, and that the reunion with the other can only happen after the reunion with herself. She begins to look at herself with more tenderness. She realizes that her intensity is not a flaw, but a compass, that her sensitivity is not weakness, but a spiritual radar, that her surrender, so judged, is proof of her greatness. She begins to care for her energy, not out of revenge, but out of reverence. She understands that she can no longer empty herself for those who are not ready to receive, because her light was not made to be wasted. It was made to illuminate. And in this process, the twin flame woman withdraws. She does not disappear out of pride. She retreats to be reborn. She disconnects from the external to hear her own soul. She returns to cultivate the sacred within herself. She begins to walk alone and discovers that she was never alone. The entire universe begins to conspire for her healing. She feels this in the signs, in dreams, in synchronicities. People begin to leave her life without explanation. Others arrive unexpectedly. She starts to take an interest in things she previously ignored. She seeks silence, nature, spirituality. What once seemed essential now loses its meaning. She begins to empty herself, not out of loss, but out of liberation. It is the time of purification, and in this time, she realizes that the love she sought so much did not die. It was just hidden beneath layers of need, fear, and illusion. She begins to remember herself. She remembers what she liked before trying to please. She remembers her voice before molding herself to be accepted. She remembers her light before believing she needed to be less to be loved. And as this memory strengthens, something changes in her vibration. She no longer needs to chase. She no longer needs to justify herself. She no longer needs to beg for presence. She begins to become presence. And in this presence, everything changes. Because the universe does not respond to unhealed pain, but to transmuted energy. The energetic field of this woman begins to align with her higher self. She is no longer guided by the fear of loss, but by the trust in who she is becoming. At this stage of the journey, she understands that love is not a prison. It is a portal. The other did not come to be possession. They came to be a mirror. And if they left, it is because something within her needed to be redone. But now she no longer waits for them to return to feel whole. She returns to herself and understands that this was all she needed, because by returning inward, she begins to vibrate at a new frequency. She forgives. She forgives the other, not because they deserve it, but because her soul can no longer carry weight. She forgives herself for all the times she betrayed herself trying to be accepted. She forgives the journey, with all its curves, for having been exactly what it needed to be. And that is when healing takes place, not as a grand event, but as a gentle breeze. The pain does not disappear all at once, but it stops dominating. The heart still feels, but it no longer gets lost. She begins to see beauty in what was once only darkness. She discovers that there is love in absence. There is poetry in silence. There is God in waiting. And that the most important reunion is not with the other, but with her own essence. This is the true miracle of the journey. When the woman who once felt destroyed by love rises whole, not because the other returned, but because she returned to herself. And then, the love that seemed to have ended reveals itself as the beginning of everything. After so many tears shed in silence, after nights facing the void, after losing everything she believed was essential, something changes. And it is not a change visible to the eyes of the world. It is a silent change, almost imperceptible, but profound. The twin flame woman begins to return home. But now, home is herself. She no longer recognizes the one who begged for answers. She no longer misses what she believed was love. She no longer sees herself as half of something unfinished. She discovered that she has always been whole, even when she bled. She had just forgotten. And now, finally, she remembers. It is in this moment that the higher self approaches, not as a distant entity, but as a presence that has always been there, waiting for her to silence the noise of pain to manifest. The higher self does not speak with urgency. It does not demand, does not force, does not charge. It whispers. And in this whisper, the woman begins to remember who she really is. She remembers that she is soul before being body, consciousness before being form, mission before being desire. What once seemed loss now reveals itself as liberation. What once seemed punishment is now seen as initiation. She begins to understand that the twin flame did not come to be the happy ending the ego dreamed of, but the portal the soul needed to cross. And upon crossing, she finds something she has never felt: peace. Not a peace dependent on circumstances, but a peace that arises from the center of her chest. She no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. She no longer needs to compete, justify herself, compare herself, because she knows who she is. And that is enough. This woman now walks differently, not because she wants to draw attention, but because she carries presence. She no longer needs words to be felt. Her energy speaks for her. It is here that the true magnetism is born, not the kind that seduces, but the kind that reveals. People begin to be attracted to her light, not out of need, but out of recognition. She is no longer available for just anything. She became the guardian of her own energy. She loves, but does not lose herself. She gives, but does not abandon herself. She feels, but does not imprison herself. This woman understood that true love does not take away her freedom, it expands her. And for that reason, she no longer accepts anything less than expansion. She understands that she can miss someone and still choose herself. She can recognize the depth of a connection and still respect divine timing. Because love has matured, it is no longer urgency, it is presence. And it is in this state of presence that the universe begins to respond. Because now, she is no longer vibrating scarcity, fear, attachment. She vibrates consciousness, surrender, truth. She no longer seeks the other to feel complete. She manifests the other from her completeness. She has learned to love without abandoning herself. She learned that the other did not come to be the center of her life, but the reflection of her center. And if he cannot reflect that, that's okay. Because she no longer needs to be chosen. She has already chosen herself. It is at this point that personal power settles in, not as arrogance, but as sovereignty. She no longer bends before the fear of losing, because she understood that everything that is truly hers finds its way back, and what does not return, teaches, liberates, aligns. This woman now honors her journey. She does not erase what she has lived, but does not cling to the past. Each memory, each pain, each tear becomes part of her alchemy. She does not reject her story. She transforms. She no longer desires control. She desires alignment. She no longer lives by expectations. She lives by presence. She does not love to be loved. She loves because she is love. And this frequency changes everything, because now her energy is her prayer. Her vibration is her command. Her silence is her strength. She no longer needs the other to return to feel special. She already knows she is divine. And, curiously, it is at this moment that the other feels the cut of the old bond, feels the call of the soul, feels the absence of the energy that was once received effortlessly. If he is also ready, he will recognize. If he is not, he will resist. But the twin flame woman no longer waits. She trusts, surrenders, and moves on, because she is not driven by promises, but by purpose. She is not just any woman. She is a soul on a mission. And now, more than ever, she knows this. If you have come this far, it is because your soul was ready to remember. It was not just a video, it was a mirror, a crossing, a calling. You recognized in yourself the traits of the twin flame woman, not because you want to fit into a title, but because something inside you vibrated with each word. Because for a long time, you felt you carried something different. And now this difference finally has a name, makes sense, has purpose. You are the one who loves with spirit, the one who heals with a glance, the one who touches without touching, the one who crosses the shadows and still chooses to light up. You are the one who was called to remember what the world tried to erase. And for that reason, this message is more than an explanation about traits or signs. It is a call for your soul to position itself. It is time to stop diminishing yourself to be accepted, to stop doubting your intuition, to stop negotiating your sensitivity as if it were a flaw. It is time to honor your essence, with firmness, with love, with presence. Because you did not come to the world to live shallow loves. You came to transform. You came to provoke silent changes wherever you go. You came to activate memories in other souls. You came to remind people what true love is. You feel this, even without understanding how, even without having learned. Because it is engraved in you. It is in your field. It is in your heart. And no matter how hard the journey has been, no matter how many losses, silences, confusions, separations, everything was part of a sacred construction. Everything was guided. Everything had a reason. Now, perhaps you look back with more kindness. Perhaps you understand that that separation was the beginning of your liberation, that that absence was your spiritual initiation, that the love that did not materialize on the outside blossomed on the inside. Nothing was in vain. The woman you are today only exists because the woman from yesterday chose to continue, even without understanding, even in tears, even in fear, even feeling that she was alone. But you were never alone. The universe supported you in the invisible, and now you are ready to support others with your light, with your story, with your energy. So, if this message touched your soul, if you saw yourself here, if something awakened inside you, I invite you to not keep this to yourself. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with other women who are also in the process of remembering. Sometimes it just takes one word to reignite an entire soul. And more than that, leave here in the comments something you discovered about yourself in this process. It can be a sentence, a feeling, a memory. Write not just for yourself, but for all those who will read and recognize themselves. This space is ours. It is sacred. It is made of souls that remember. And before concluding, take this phrase as a spiritual seal for this moment in your life. The twin flame woman is not defined by who chooses her, but by who she decides to be when no one chooses her. It is in this place of silence, surrender, and truth that true love begins. Not from the outside, but from within. And when it is born in you, the whole world changes form. You are the living proof of this, and the universe honors your light.